Good morning, my friends. Happy Monday. Meredith. You make me laugh. I was in the middle of being encouraging. Happy 17th of February. Is it snowy there? It's not snowy here, but it's going to be snowy on Wednesday. We're going to get a ton of snow on Wednesday. And by a ton, I mean like 5 inches. What on earth? Why? Why 5 inches of snow? I did not move to North Carolina to get snow twice in 1 year. This is not okay. I'm starting to feel like I'm the reason the weather's turning crappy in North Carolina. I have the dog here with me this morning. He's just maxing and relaxing. Aren't you, Bass? Sebastian, can you say hi? Can you say good morning? Sebastian. Sebastian, can you say hi? Say hi. He's like, to who? You weirdo. Who are you talking to? That's what he's thinking. I know what he's thinking, trust me. We know. We can read each other's minds, right, Bassmaster? Can't we? Hi, Aylin. All right, girls, let's go ahead and read devotions. Let's start on February 17th. Procedures for the sin offering. This is going to be a fun one. Leviticus 4 1 through 35. Then the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. This is how you are to deal with those who sin unintentionally by doing anything that violates one of the Lord's commands. If the high priest sins, bringing guilt upon the entire community, he must give a sin offering for the sin he has committed. He must present to the Lord a young bull with no defects. He must bring the bull to the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle, lay his hands on the bull's head, and slaughter it before the Lord. The high priest will then take some of the bull's blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the inner curtain of the sanctuary. The priest will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense that stands. The priest will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense that stands in the Lord's presence inside the tabernacle. He will pour out the rest of the bull's blood at the base of the altar for burnt offerings at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then the priest must remove all the fat of the bull to be offered as a sin offering. This includes all the fat around the internal organs, the 2 kidneys, and the fat around them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver. He must remove these along with the kidneys, just as he does with cattle offered as a peace offering, and burn them on the altar of burnt offerings. He must take whatever is left of the bull, its hide, meat, head, legs, internal organs, and dung, and carry it away to a special place outside the camp that is ceremonially clean, the place where the ashes are dumped. There, on the ash heap, he will burn it on a wood fire. If the entire Israelite community sins by violating one of the Lord's commands, but the people don't realize it, they are still guilty. When they become aware of their sin, the people must bring a young bull as an offering for their sin and present it before the tabernacle. The elders of the community must then lay their hands on the bull's head and slaughter it before the Lord. The high priest will then take some of the bull's blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the inner curtain. He will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense that stands in the Lord's presence inside the tabernacle. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar for burnt offerings at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then the priest must remove all the animal's fat and burn it on the altar, just as he does with the bull offered as a sin offering for the high priest. Through this process, the priest will purify the people, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. Then the priest must take what is left of the bull and carry it outside the camp and burn it there, just as is done with the sin offering for the high priest. This offering is for the sin of the entire congregation of Israel. If one of Israel's leaders sins by violating one of the commands of the Lord his God, but doesn't realize it, he is still guilty. When he becomes aware of his sin, he must bring his offering he must bring as his offering a male goat with no defects. He must lay his hand on the goat's head and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered before the Lord. This is an offering for his sin. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must burn all of the goat's fat on the altar, just as he does with the peace offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the leader from his sin, making him right with the Lord, and he will be forgiven. If any of the common people sin by violating one of the Lord's commands, but they don't realize it, they are still guilty. When they become aware of their sin, they must bring as an offering for their sin a female goat with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offering. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the goat's fat, just as he does with the fat of the peace offering. He will burn the fat on the altar, and it will be a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. If the people bring a sheep as their sin offering, it must be a female with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the sheep's fat, just as he does with the fat of a sheep presented as a peace offering. He will burn the fat on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people from their sin, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. Sin requires a sin offering. Leviticus 5, 1-13. If you are called to testify about something you have seen or that you know about, it is sinful to refuse to testify, and you will be punished for your sin. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that is ceremonially unclean, such as a carcass of an unclean animal. When you realize what you have done, you must admit your defilement and your guilt. This is true whether it is a wild animal or a domestic animal, or an animal that scurries along the ground. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that makes a person unclean. When you realize what you have done, you must admit your guilt. Or suppose you make a foolish vow of any kind, whether its purpose is for good or for bad. When you realize its foolishness, you must admit your guilt. When you become aware of your guilt in any of these ways, you must confess your sin. Then you must bring to the Lord as penalty for your sin a female from the flock, either a sheep or a goat. This is a sin offering with which the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord. But you cannot afford to bring a sheep. If you cannot afford to bring a sheep, you may bring to the Lord 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons as a penalty for your sin. One of the birds will be for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. You must bring them to the priest, who will present the first bird as a sin offering. He will wring its neck, but without severing its head from the body. Then he will sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering against the sides of the altar, and the rest of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. This is an offering for sin. The priest will then prepare the second bird as a burnt offering, following all the procedures that have been prescribed. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. If you cannot afford to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, you may bring 2 quarts of choice flour for your sin offering. Since it is an offering for sin, you must not moisten it with olive oil or put any frankincense on it. Take the flour to the priest, who will scoop out a handful as representative portion. He will burn it on top of the altar. He will burn it on the altar on top of special gifts presented to the Lord. It is an offering for sin. Through this process, the priest will purify those who are guilty of any of these sins, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. The rest of the flour will belong to the priest, just as with the grain offering. Procedures for the guilt offering, Leviticus 5, 14-19. Then the Lord said to Moses, "If one of you commits a sin by unintentionally defiling the Lord's sacred property, you must bring a guilt offering to the Lord. The offering must be your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value with silver, as measured by the weight of the sanctuary shekel. You must make restitution for the sacred property you have harmed by paying for the loss, plus an additional 20%. When you give the payment to the priest, he will purify you with the ram sacrificed as a guilt offering, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. Even if you are unaware of what you have done, you are guilty and will be punished for your sin. For a guilt offering, you must bring to the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your unintentional sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. This is a guilt offering, for you have been guilty of an offense against the Lord. Sins requiring a guilt offering, Leviticus 6, 1 through 7. Then the Lord said to Moses, suppose one of you sins against your associate and is unfaithful to the Lord. Suppose you cheat in a deal involving a security deposit, or you steal or commit fraud, or you find lost property and lie about it, or you lie while swearing to tell the truth, or you commit any other such sin. If you have sinned in any of these ways, you are guilty. You must give back whatever you stole, or take the money you took by extortion, or the security deposit, or the lost property you found, or anything obtained by swearing falsely. You must make restitution by paying the full price plus an additional 20% of the person you have 20% to the person you have harmed. On the same day, you must present a guilt offering. As a guilt offering to the Lord, you must bring to the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you before the Lord, making you right with him, and you will be forgiven for any of these sins you have committed. Further instructions for the burnt offering, Leviticus 6, 8 through 13. Then the Lord said to Moses, give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the burnt offering. The burnt offering must be left on top of the altar until the next morning, and the fire on the altar must be kept burning all night. In the morning, after the priest on duty has put his official linen clothing and linen garments, he must clean out the ashes of the burnt offering and put them beside the altar. Then he must take off these garments, change back into his regular clothes, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a place that is ceremonially clean. Meanwhile, the fire on the altar must be kept burning. It must never go out. Each morning, the priest will add fresh wood to the fire and arrange the burnt offering on it. He will then burn the fat of the peace offerings on it. Remember, the fire must be kept burning on the altar at all times. It must never go out. Further instruction for the grain offering, Leviticus 6, 14 through 18. These are the instructions regarding the grain offering. Aaron's sons must present this offering to the Lord in front of the altar. The priest on duty will take from the grain offering a handful of choice flour moistened with olive oil, together with all the frankincense. He will burn this representative portion on the altar as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Aaron and his sons may eat the rest of the flour, but it must be baked without yeast and eaten in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Remember, it must never be prepared with yeast. I have given it to the priests as their share of the special gifts as presented to me. Like the sin offering and the guilt offering, it is most holy. Any of Aaron's male descendants may eat from the special gifts presented to the Lord. This is their permanent right from generation to generation. Anyone or anything that touches these offerings will become holy. Procedures for the ordination offering. Leviticus 6, 19 through 23. Then the Lord said to Moses, on the day Aaron and his sons are anointed, they must present to the Lord the standard grain offering of 2 quarts of choice flour, half to be offered the next morning and half to be offered in the evening. It must be carefully mixed with olive oil and cooked on a griddle. Then slice this grain offering and present it as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. In each generation, the high priest who succeeds Aaron must prepare the same offering. It belongs to the Lord, and it must be burned up completely. This is a permanent law. All such grain offerings of a priest must be burned up entirely. None of it may be eaten. Further instructions for sin offering, Leviticus 6, 24 through 30. Then the Lord said to Moses, give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the sin offering. The animal given as an offering for sin is a most holy offering, and it must be slaughtered in the Lord's presence at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. The priest who offers the sacrifice as a sin offering must eat his portion in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Anyone or anything that touches the sacrificial meat will become holy. If any of the sacrificial blood splatters on a person's clothing, the soiled garment must be washed in a sacred place. If a clay pot is used to boil the sacrificial meat, it then must be broken. If a bronze pot is used, it must be scoured and thoroughly rinsed with water. Any male from the priest's family may eat from this offering. It is most holy. But the offering for sin may not be eaten if its blood was brought into the tabernacle as an offering for purification in the holy place. It must be completely burned with fire. Whew! All right. We are on to chapter 36 of our book, Learning to Live Above. This one is called Plowing in the Winter. Proverbs 20, verse 4. The sluggard does not plow when winter sets in. Therefore, he begs in harvest and has nothing. When I think about winter, I think about watching the snowfall, waiting in great anticipation for the cancellation of school, building snowmen in my front yard, bundling up in layers upon layers of clothing, and drinking lots of hot chocolate. Winter, however, can wreak havoc on people, animals, and vegetation. While it is necessary, it can be difficult to survive the harsh elements. Spiritual winters can prove to be equally, if not more, severe. There are several parallels between an actual winter and a spiritual winter, but I want to point out one similarity that struck me as interesting. In Proverbs 20, verse 4, Solomon writes, "The sluggard does not plow when winter sets in. Therefore, he begs in harvest and has nothing." The first thing I notice is that winter will set in. It is not a surprise or a product of something going wrong. It is just part of the world in which we live. Spiritually, we must realize that we will experience different seasons in our Christian walk. This is not a punishment or an attack. It is just a natural part of our spiritual walk. Just like in the physical world, our spiritual winters serve important purposes to promote new growth, and we must learn not only how to survive through them, but also how to appreciate them. Not only do we learn from this passage that winter will set in, but we also see that if we do not plow when winter sets in, then we will have nothing when harvest time arrives. Plowing is the last thing we feel like doing when winter comes. In fact, we just want to curl up on the couch, sip our hot chocolate, and read a good book. During our spiritual winters, we feel the same way. We don't want to sow love into someone who is hurting us. We are not up to giving money away when finances are running tight. We don't feel like continuing to believe God for a miracle when after all this time, nothing has happened. We are not in the mood to keep doing what we know we are supposed to do. Nothing is happening. So what's the point? The point is that it may be a spiritual winter. So what constitutes a spiritual winter? To help us understand, let's look at what happens in a natural winter. It is often cold and dreary. It is cold and often dreary. There are less hours of daylight, so it is less exposure to the sun. In spiritual winter, coldness sometimes sets in over our devotional life. The excitement is waning, and we do not seem to be receiving from God like we did in times past. Leaves and fruit die and drop from trees. Not only does new growth stop, but the fruit that was there seems to disappear. Spiritually, we do not see as much fruitfulness, and even the fruit that we once had seems to be out of our sight. The ground is hard and difficult to break up. Spiritually, the sowing that used to come so easy now requires hard work and a strong resolve. Hard freezes come. During this time, trouble can often show up and catch us at our weakest and most vulnerable. Everything around looks dormant. In our spiritual life, our dreams appear to be just a memory. Our life seems to be mundane and without purpose. We feel lost, dry, and useless. Due to the harshness of winter, plowing is more difficult, but it is also extremely necessary. If we want to reap the harvest, we must learn how to plow in the winter. I love that the Bible uses this term plow because that is exactly what I feel like we are doing. I remember when a friend of mine had hurt me deeply and I was struggling terribly with rejection. I knew that I was to continue showing her love and treating her with kindness, but I definitely did not feel like doing it. Every time I smiled and initiated conversation, it felt like plowing. When I would call and invite her to do something with me, it felt like I was breaking up hard ground. Each act of friendship required me to seek God for strength, but He always supplied and helped me carry it out. After a while, it felt like an eternity at first, my attitude changed and my wounds began to heal. The rejection left and I felt stronger. The peace, joy, and fruitfulness in relationships that I received was an incredible harvest that I would never have reaped had God not taught me how to plow in the wintertime. One of the problems with plowing is that we do not achieve immediate gratification. Our flesh feels like Our flesh likes to see the results right away, and when we do not see them, we can become frustrated or discouraged. But think about when a farmer plows up the ground in preparation for the seed. It is months before even the slightest buds crop up to prove that growth is happening. During the plowing season, we are preparing our circumstances for the seed of God to be planted. When we allow Him to be planted in our situation, then amazing supernatural results are going to be produced. You may feel like nothing is happening, but let me encourage you to keep plowing because you will reap the harvest. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at a proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." So keep it up. The harvest is coming. It's a wonderful book, Linda. It's called Learning to Live Above by Carmen McLean. I think the website is learningtoliveabove.com. I feel like it's something like that because it was sold out on Amazon after we started promoting it. It sold out, and right here, livingabove.net, www.livingabove.net. You can get the book there from Carmen. She's sweet. All right, let me scroll back, see if I missed any of the chat. Meredith. Yeah. I don't think he's ever going to lift his paw. He'll lift and high five, but I don't think he's going to lift his paw to wave high. You had a big snowstorm, Halen. That's good. A 2-hour delay. A big snowstorm here would mean no school for a week and a half. I know, Shelley. Isn't it crazy to think of? I mean, hundreds of thousands of animals. Susan, if you're looking at Facebook and your profile picture is up in the upper right, you click that button and go to settings and privacy, and in there is where you'll change your name. Sanctuary Shekels. That's how it's pronounced. Hi, Braddock. Oh, we'll be praying for you, Elizabeth. Y'all, I have a very serious prayer request. I mean this with all of my heart. I may sound like I'm being sarcastic, but I mean it. This is a serious prayer request. My daughter starts driver's ed today. This is a very serious prayer request because her mother feels like she's going to have a panic attack. And I have to remain calm and be like, it'll be okay. You're going to do great. While she's going, I don't want to drive. I don't want to drive. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm over here going, I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to do it. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. It's the school portion, Susan. She's doing the education portion. The driving comes according to age. They will call them in order to go driving according to oldest to youngest. Well, she's almost 18, so she's probably going to get called for driving pretty quickly. So it will be with them, not with me. I ain't got no brakes on my passenger side. I just cannot fathom that kid driving. Like, she can barely drive a shopping cart without running into somebody. How is she going to handle a great big vehicle? I'm going to have to find money to go buy her a car because I don't want her driving my minivan. I have a really nice minivan. I don't want her driving it. And she can't drive my convertible because it's full of blind spots and there's no backup camera. I'm going to have to find money to buy her a car. Oh. Yeah, she has no desire to drive a car. She told me that she just wants to marry somebody who likes to drive all the time. I'm like, listen, girlfriend, you have to go to college. She plans on going, but she talks about doing online college. I'm like, girl, you need to like go find somebody who wants to drive and marry like a driver, like somebody that will drive you everywhere. You need to find somebody who wants to be a chauffeur for a living. I know. No, I know I don't have to do it, but I need her to be prepared, Alice. Like she wants to go to college. I have no idea, Meredith. I don't know anything about it. I know zero about it. I know zero about it. But I need her to be able to drive before she goes to college. And she's only a year away from college. She's Bassy, don't lick my cabinets. You just licked my mirror that I just washed. All right, peeps. Let's go ahead and end in prayer. God, our Father, we thank you for this day and this time together and this group of women coming together before you. And I thank you for the message that you give to us and you speak to us every day. And I thank you for this devotional and how it always speaks to somebody just when they need it. And I know that you are in that, God. And we thank you for Carmen and her willingness to let us read this. And we just thank you for the blessing it's been to all of us. God, I pray for each person here and all that they're going through, the many trials, waiting for test results and waiting for next chemo treatments and just illness and sicknesses and storms. And life is full of dark trials for so many right now, God. And I just pray your blessings and your peace and your provision and your comfort for each and every one here. God, as we go through our day, I pray that you will help us to make choices that honor you. Help us to recognize each and every choice that we make today, whether it's our words, our actions, our food choices, whatever we do, that it can be honoring to you and can be a form of worship to you. And help us to recognize that today in our choices. In your precious holy name, I pray. Amen. All right, friends. 60 hours with parents. And then they test for learner's permit. She has to drive for 60 hours plus a year? That's a long time. Guess we got to get it done. Shelly, that's going to be us. That might be her too, 44. Jamie, because I don't want her driving my car. That's why. I don't think she's going to do well in the convertible. Like it's very blind. The convertible is harder to drive, I find, than a regular vehicle. There's so many blind spots, and I don't want to drive my minivan. Oh. Yeah, I'm sure she probably can. I'd love to have her have it in college. Oh, because she'll turn 18. That's right. Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying, Shirley. Well, it's no, the blind spots are not there with the top down. But she's not going to drive with the top down all the time, especially this time of year. With the top down, there's no blind spots at all. But with the top up is very, there's a lot. The pillars on the front are pretty blind too. It's It's not great. So, all right, my friends. Well, I am going to make breakfast live this morning. And do I know what it is? Absolutely not. I have no idea. Something with blackberries, probably oatmeal. I thought about like a blackberry. I don't know. I have to think. Some kind of blackberry flavored thing because I have a ton of blackberries to use up. So, all right, you guys. I hope to see you live for breakfast in a few minutes. Give me some time to figure out what I'm going to do. I should look at my calendar. Yes, that's kind of what I want to do, Shirley. But I know her father. It won't be mine. Yes, I don't have anything this morning. Yeah, I've done it with that way before too, Nikki. It is pretty good. All right, guys. I love you all and hope to see you for